Chapter 21. "Well," Pitbull said, running a hand over his hair. It needed a wash, as did his tie, marked with a stain that Fraser hoped was coffee. "What've you got for me? Better be bloody good." Fraser had considered her approach on the drive to Worcester, summoned into the office that morning by Pitbull to justify her continuing place on the team, she supposed. After the death of Lucy Hawkins, the DCI had seconded Corby to the incident room at the bunkhouse, and, now that inquiries there were complete, she would stay with the team at their temporary base in Shrewsbury until the investigation was over. Corby had shown herself to be professional and thorough, the DCI had said when informing Fraser, leaving her to conclude that while she might have been one, she had not been the other. "That might depend a little on your perspective, sir," Fraser said. "Meaning?" Pitbull asked. He opened the window as far as its security fixing would allow, letting in a flash of birdsong and a slight movement of air. "Meaning that I don't think it puts Marianne Leonard in the frame, sir, which I suspect is where you'd like her to be, given that no one else has popped up." "Fair point. So?" He passed her a thick black coffee, courtesy of his new coffee pod machine, which filled the office with an aroma almost strong enough to overlay the scent of old paper from the stack of folders on his desk. Fraser wondered how he ever found anything. "I think her story might have a bearing on the death of Anna Price, although I have absolutely no proof so far, but it might be worth digging in that direction." His chair creaked as he sat back, belly testing his shirt buttons. Going on the wagon wasn't helping him to lose weight. Maybe he'd replaced the beer with chocolate. "I thought that's what you were doing yesterday. Digging. Chowdhury said you disappeared off to her cottage and never made it back." "With the greatest respect, sir, the woman was in a bad way, which you might understand had you read her file, and I felt responsible. Besides, gaining her confidence might be useful if there's any mileage in the idea." "Go on." The DCI was aware of Marianne's murder conviction. He'd made that clear in the rocket he'd given Fraser the previous morning. Fraser had read both the probation report and the court records, but it was only through talking to Marianne herself, after the bunkhouse evening meal was done and they'd returned to the cottage, that she'd understood the story behind it. A naive girl, desperate to break free of ultra-strict God-bothering parents, falling in with a crowd of surfers, falling in love with one of them, and, only just 15, ripe for seduction with drink, drugs and eventually sex. The night of the party, Marianne's parents had gone away on a church retreat, and she'd claimed to be staying with a friend for some GCSE revision. Only she and the friend had sneaked down to the beach to meet Marianne's surfer boy and his mates. She didn't know how many of them had had sex with her. It had been her boyfriend first. Maybe they'd spiked her drink. Maybe she had just had too much. But after her boyfriend had taken his turn, another one had appeared. And then another. She thought maybe 5, only she'd been too far gone to tell. She remembered only the flashes of faces, different smells, different voices. "They raped you," Fraser had said, when Marianne referred to it only as sex. Did they? Fraser could still see her now, wound into a knot on her sofa, a dog on each side regarding Fraser with wary eyes. She had taken the armchair, giving Marianne space. "People have called it rape," Marianne said. "Therapists, in prison. But I don't remember saying no, so was it?" "Were you in any fit state to give consent?" "Of course not. I see that now. But then, I thought I was in love. I thought falling in love would be a way out, my great escape. My parents didn't. It was all God this and God that." And then to find herself pregnant. She'd laughed, bitter and raw. The irony. "I think about it every time I hear anything about IVF and fertility. People try so hard to get pregnant and can't. The very first time I had sex, I did. I wondered if the fact that there was more than one of them made it a higher probability. I don't know which one was the father, of course. Fraser's heart had wrenched at her dispassionate delivery.
"And what does this have to do with our case?" Pitbull asked, his tone jarring.
Fraser had given him the edited version, kept it to language that gave Marianne some dignity, though there was little to be found. Anna Price was looking for her birth mother. You remember what Mona Balbriggan, the head teacher, said? When Chowdhury requested Marianne Leonard's probation report, the probation service informed him that someone had been searching for information about Marianne on behalf of her child. They'd found her through a private Christian adoption agency. Maybe that, the child, was Anna Price.
Did they put them in touch?
No. Marianne had covered her tracks, changed her name, and specifically told the probation service she didn't want her whereabouts revealed to anyone.
Why would she do that?
Fraser had supposed that Marianne had wanted nothing to do with a baby conceived as hers had been. Marianne, though, said it hadn't been that. What child would want her for a parent after what she'd done? Sent away to some church home in Worcester when her pregnancy became impossible to hide, the baby taken before she had even held it. After the birth, she had run away from home and, living on the streets, descended into addiction with only one way to fund her habit. When a sometime client had decided he had the right to have sex with her without being obliged to pay, because what was she after all but filth, she had stabbed him. He had died within minutes. What child would want to know that about their mother? Marianne had asked. How could they feel anything but shame and disgust?
Surely this makes her more rather than less of a suspect, Pitbull said, tapping a pen against his teeth. If Leonard went to such lengths to leave her past behind her, the last thing she'd want is her child tracking her down, threatening to derail it all.
So what? Fraser said. You think she smashed her own child's head in?
She stabbed a punter with a pair of scissors.
Because he raped her.
Only her word for it. Anyway, it's a tricky thing, isn't it? Sex workers and rape.
No, sir, Fraser said. It isn't. Rape is rape. Pitbull flicked an eye up at that. Something in her tone, perhaps. He'd watched her for a moment and she returned the gaze, willing him to make an argument of it. She'd come across the view often enough working in Vice and had the confidence of knowing she could flatten him if it came down to it. Maybe best not, if she wanted to stay on his team to see out this investigation. And she did. Not just for Marianne's sake, for Anna Price and Lucy Hawkins, for Russell, and all the other bunkhouse guests who'd had their lives marked by one person's inability to accept reality or to see another way forward. I've told you before, sir, I don't buy Marianne Leonard as our killer. I can't see her killing out of any motive but fear, and she had nothing to fear from Anna Price.
Except exposure.
With the ghoulish taste for true crime, don't you think exposure as a convicted murderer might boost the bunkhouse business? Not in a way she'd want, but still. Fraser kept just enough levity in her voice to deflect any suspicion that her interest in Marianne was anything but professional. Nothing like shutting the stable door after the horse had bolted. Pitbull drained his mug and leaned back again, shirt buttons straining.
So, how is it relevant then, this theory of yours?
It gives Anna a reason to have booked herself into the bunkhouse under a false name. She ticked her points off on her fingers as she spoke. It might explain why this boyfriend was resentful. Or maybe not even resentful, maybe he was worried about her getting hurt. Was trying to stop her visiting Marianne in case it all went wrong. They argued, she ran off and then, I don't know. Maybe they had a fight and her death was an accident. Maybe she fell and he pushed her into the pool. Or maybe he never caught up with her and she had the bad luck to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Lost on the hill and someone else came upon her. Like the Brown Clee murder. Pitbull tapped his teeth again.
So, why didn't the boyfriend come forward? Worried he'll get the blame?
Unless there's another body out there we haven't found yet. Fraser still struggled to understand why no further search had been made of the steep valleys on that side of the Stiper Stones once they'd found Anna. Perkins Beach and Green Hill held plenty of dips and falls where a body might lie hidden for months.
Random killer out on the hill looking for victims, you reckon? Pitbull said. If it hadn't happened on Brown Clee, I'd say you were barking, but could be copycat even. Worth a thought, anyway.
He sat up and tugged a manila folder out from the middle of a pile, chucked it Fraser's way.
Forensics report. The barn where they found Lucy Hawkins. Not a lot. No DNA so far aside from on the rope where it was in contact with her body. Traces on her shoes and clothes suggest she might have been killed in that copse near the car park. They searched it yesterday, took samples, looking for organic matter. DNA if we're lucky. The spot's not hard to find. Plenty of evidence of a struggle. Scuff and drag marks suggesting the debris on her shoes might lead to a positive verification. Poor lass, put up quite a struggle.
He sighed.
Whoever it was wore overalls and gloves. Fibres matched garments found in the kit store belonging to that mountain expeditions outfit. Could have been anyone with access to the barn, which is everyone at that bloody place.
They'd have had to have been strong enough to carry her in, haul her up, dead weight and all, Fraser said, flicking through the photographs, pausing for a moment to examine the rope that had suspended Lucy from the beam. Or maybe not. One of Taylor's climbing ropes was threaded through a pulley with a ratchet mechanism which would have made the job of hauling it up considerably easier. Everything the killer had needed had been in that barn. And who better than Roger Taylor to know where it all was? And he'd have been able to carry Lucy Hawkins on one shoulder. Only none of their checks had yielded any connection between him and Anna Price, except that she'd attended one of his courses 3 years ago.
We'll need to do some more digging on Taylor, Pitbull said, correctly reading her thoughts.
Our killer knew their notes too, Fraser said, gesturing to the photograph.
Bet Taylor shows off to his trainees with him. And that Martin Davis lad was in the Scouts. Still volunteers, apparently. They do knots and stuff, don't they?
Fraser smiled. I wouldn't know, sir. Boys' own stuff, not really my thing.
Pitbull gave a grudging laugh. Guess not. Mad lad's just joined. Bit middle class for me, but his mum likes it. Came back from survival weekend and showed us all how to make a hangman's knot. Used them for hanging food from trees, apparently.
He opened the drawer of his desk and took out some sugar-free gum. He offered it to Fraser. When she shook her head, he flicked a piece into his mouth and dropped the pack back in the drawer.
And that Ingalls lad is into his sailing. He'd know about knots too. Big enough to move the body, maybe. What do you reckon to him?
Favourite, as far as those at the centre are concerned, which may be significant.
Pitbull nodded. Told a few fibs too.
He took a deep breath in and patted his belly like it was a drum.
Right, we'll bring him into Shrewsbury, get him in an interview room. That should shake him out of his moody silence.